Hey everyone, welcome back to RetroBreak. Today I wanted to talk all about the new Analogue Pocket. This came through the post about a week ago now and I've been really enjoying it so far. This is the one that I chose to get. This is the Kiwi Green version, I think it's called. And the reason I chose to get this one in particular is because when I was a kid, I actually had this colour, Game Boy Color. There's a terrible photo here that you can see, and unfortunately that's the only thing that I've got to remind myself of that system, because I think I sold it around the time when the Game Boy Advance came out, and I never actually ended up buying that colour again, so I don't have it here to do a comparison, unfortunately. But it is very nostalgic holding this colour and being able to play some of my favourite original Game Boy Color games on this brand new system. But it's not only the colour, that's not the only reason that I wanted to upgrade. I did, before that, have a launch day version of the Analogue Pocket. Here's my day one edition from the first batch from December 2021, I think. And there are actually quite a few differences between this original release and the new 2024 version. So in this video, I'm going to tell you what those differences are and what you can expect if you do pick up one of these new Analogue Pocket systems. But before that, let me talk a bit about Analogue as a company, because I have very mixed feelings about them and about the Analogue Pocket in particular. So although I love it, and I loved my original version, the way Analogue's running their business by having all these different limited release versions of the console kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit, and there's no reason for them to make these limited. They actually have other systems for sale on their website, like the PC Engine, the Analogue Duo I think it's called. That one isn't limited, you can buy that whenever you want, and the amount of these that they're making, there's no reason for them to be limited whatsoever. And instead of releasing new or upgraded versions, they're just releasing the exact same internals and console and buttons as they were like 3 or 4 years ago. When the original system came out, they haven't actually improved anything. Well, they have very slightly, and I'll get back to that in a little bit, but I just feel like Analogue should be doing more as a company to make them more reputable in the retro gaming space, because I do see a lot of negative comments, and it is such a shame because the build quality of their systems is just phenomenal. There really is no other company like them, so to see them falter in the regards of sales for the system and their branding and stuff can be a little bit cliche at times as well. There are a few things that I would like to see them do a lot better, but with that said, let's take a look at this new system and compare it to the original, and I'll show you all of the benefits that this new system has brought me, and I'm very happy with it. So at first glance, you wouldn't really think there's anything different apart from the colour, but if we look a little bit more closely, first of all, the buttons on the side, and this was a big issue for me originally. If we take a look at the original Analogue Pocket here, you can see that the volume buttons there and the power button are actually flush against the console. If we turn it sideways, you can't see them at all, and if you rub your finger across it, you can't really feel where they are, especially volume up and volume down. It was almost impossible to change the volume, and when you press it down with your finger, you actually end up pressing both at once, and they have fixed that with the new Analogue Pocket. So as you can see, hopefully you can see on the camera, they actually jut out from the system a lot more now, so if you rub your finger down across it, you can actually feel the different ridges for the different buttons there. And it is so much easier to press volume up and volume down separately, and to press the power button in as well. It's just a fantastic improvement, and it was really a strange decision for them to do it flush against the system on the original. So that's the first big upgrade. And an even bigger upgrade for the system for me personally, and this was an issue that plagued a lot of the first release of the consoles, and that is the L and R buttons here. So the L trigger on this particular system actually doesn't press down at all, and it only registers maybe once every 5 or 6 presses, which basically makes some Game Boy Advance games completely unplayable. Like, I don't know whether you can hear that, but it's not actually pressing at all compared to that side. Like, you can hear the spring, but sometimes it doesn't recognize, sometimes you have to press it really hard, and it was actually hurting my fingers. So I was very happy to find out that the L and R buttons on this new one feel like they've been completely redesigned, and I don't know how recent of a change that was. Maybe it was in the other versions, maybe it was in that titanium one that came out a few years back, but yeah, they feel so much better. They do sound a little bit springy, like, if you can pick that up on the microphone. You can hear the spring inside, but honestly, if it feels good, that's the main thing. The issue I still have with these L&R buttons though is if you put a game in there, you're pretty much going to be putting your finger up against the cartridge, and although it's not really an issue because the cartridge is quite sturdy, it still doesn't feel quite right. Definitely not as nice as having a horizontal handheld where the button is kind of resting on your finger. You just have a tiny little bit here, kind of like the Game Boy Advance SP, but they still don't feel quite as good as that even. But that brings me on to the next plus point about this system. That is the cartridge slot itself. I was very happy to find that the cartridge slot is actually a lot more sturdy than it was on the original. So if we put the cart in here, you can actually see that it takes a bit of force to press down and a bit of force to pull out as well, and you get this really nice satisfying click. But if we put the same game in my original one, it's a lot looser. It just slides in and out. You don't really get the same click, and I was actually quite worried, especially if we play, for example, a Game Boy Color game in here. Like, you can see it shaking around there without much force, and if you knock it with your fingers, you might be able to knock it out of alignment, but in this version, it's a lot more sturdy. It doesn't have any rock or shake to it at all. So that is a big improvement. I feel a lot more comfortable having the cartridges in here, and I still feel like it was a bit of a strange design to have it completely exposed. Like, maybe about there would make a lot more sense, but to have almost the entire thing hanging out the back of the system does still feel quite precarious. So I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about that, but I am glad that they've actually fixed the responsiveness of this. So I do feel a lot safer carrying this around with me, and I've even had it in my pocket and I haven't had it slide out or anything, whereas in the original sometimes I would have it in my pocket or I would pull it out and it would just slide out, and luckily sometimes you could just put it straight back in and the game would play again, but it was kind of a worry when I was carrying it around with me, so that doesn't seem to be an issue anymore, which is fantastic. The next thing that was fixed for me, and again, I don't know whether this was just an issue with the launch day systems, but for some games, when I was pressing up or down, it would also trigger diagonals as well. For example, if I attempted to play Tetris on here, and I was holding down to lower the piece, occasionally the piece would shift over to the left or the right without me actually pressing either of those directions. So that was extremely frustrating, but I'm very happy to say that all of those issues have been solved with this new D-pad. And I think it is a new design for the D-pad as well. It actually sounds quite different. It's actually quite a bit noisier. Like if we compare it to the original, if I press these buttons, you can kind of hear they're a bit soft and squidgy, whereas this one, it has a bit more of a click to it. And if you press the D-pad in, it's actually really noisy. So sometimes I'm pressing up and you hear that really loud click, which can be kind of annoying, especially if you're holding it front on like that, like moving around. It is very loud. And I found the buttons were quite loud to begin with, but it seems like since I've been playing it over the week, they've actually become less noisy than they were to begin with. So maybe the D-pad will follow suit. But again, the face buttons on the original actually sounded a lot spongier, so I don't know whether they've changed something with how the buttons on the front are as well. Like, if you move them around like that, you can hear them very, very pronounced, but on here, it's more or less the same, but it is a little bit softer. So they're the main differences with this updated console itself, and I've had a great time playing it throughout the week. I've been playing a lot of Mega Man Battle Network, the original one, which I picked up a few weeks ago, and I'm about 7 hours in now, and I'm really enjoying it. A lot of people say the first Mega Man Battle Network game isn't as good as the other ones, but honestly, outside of some slightly frustrating dungeon design, it seems just as good as all of the other ones. I just love those games so much, and because I hadn't actually updated this Analogue Pocket in a while, there were actually a bunch of new features on this one as well, so let's go back on the overhead camera and I can show you some of those cool updates. So with this new firmware, one of the new updates here was this library option, where you can actually store all the games that you've played so far. I've only played 2 games, but as you can see, over the week I've actually played it quite a bit. I've played 7 hours and 8 minutes of Mega Man Battle Network, and I've played 3 hours and 3 minutes of Metal Walker, which is the Game Boy Color game that I was showing off in there earlier. And if you want to see more about this game, I actually did a Let's Play, an old-fashioned Let's Play, not a live stream. So if you want to see my Let's Play for Metal Walker, go ahead and check out my gameplay channel, RetroBreak_live, and you can see my gameplay for that. I had a great time playing it. And on here as well, you can also choose a list view, or you can choose a grid view and see the games that way as well. And you can download these images to show up here. So you've got the title screen there, and you've also got the image on the front, and you can put them onto the SD card. And I've also been playing around with the OpenFPGA cores as well, which I never really gave much of a chance on my older system here. So I have just stuffed it full of basically every different home console and handheld that's available. There's so much great stuff on here, and I've been so impressed with the responsiveness, with the graphics on here. Like if we run this SNES one here and launch Super Tetris 3, which was the game that I was using to test the D-pad to see whether it was any better, and I was happy to report that it was. But when we launched the game up, let me show you some of these graphics options on this core, because I was just blown away the first time I loaded it up with this CRT filter. So first of all, let me give you a quick demo of the new D-pad in action. So you can see I'm holding down there, and it is not going to the side at all, which is absolutely perfect. So now I can play one of my favourite versions of Tetris, Super Tetris 3, without any issues whatsoever. But the really cool thing about this, and I don't know whether the camera's going to pick it up very well or not, but if you go on core settings and display settings, originally it was like this, which is like classic emulator style, so you get the full resolution of the nice LCD screen in here. But if we go into CRT Trinitron, and there was a bunch of modes here, you can change the grill aperture, you can change, do you want the scan lines, do you want hard or soft edges, do you want heavy scan lines, and what size do you want it as well. So you can actually do integer plus, which actually fills the Analogue Pocket screen, but doesn't really stretch anything, because you can use this to sort of scale it back down again. And it just looks absolutely incredible. I don't know whether it's going to pick up the difference on the camera, but if I get close enough, maybe you can see a difference there. So this is it with the CRT filter on, and in person this looks so good that I literally said out loud as I swapped over to it, like, wow, this looks amazing. So this is definitely going to be my go-to way to play SNES games on the go from now on. So let me change it back to the normal mode, and hopefully you can see a difference there. Let me know in the comments whether you can actually tell the difference between them or not. But yeah, incredibly happy with this, and that is obviously just one of many different cores that I've got on here, which is fantastic. There's also a new memory system, which was not available on my original one, but they were talking about it. So you can see the different save states that you've got here, and you've got space for up to 128 different save states for all your various different games. And screenshots as well, which I've been having quite a lot of fun with as well. So if we go through here, you can see the screenshot, you can see the date and time that it was captured, and these actually go onto the SD card as well. And if you have a look at my Blue Sky account, I actually posted some of them. They're at original resolution, so you don't get any of the benefits of the upscaling from the system, but it's great if you just want to capture some stuff for using in a blog post or something. So really happy to have that as an option as well now. So overall, as you can probably tell, I'm extremely satisfied with my purchase of this new Analogue Pocket here. Let me know what you think of Analogue as a company, and let me know what you think of the Analogue Pocket, whether that's the original or these new versions, down in the comments below. And if you want more Analogue Pocket videos, then I did one up here about all of the different cartridge adapters. And I'll see you all again very soon. Goodbye.